Good morning. It is 9:30 in the morning on Tuesday, March 22nd. The Richland County Board of Commissioners now in session. Commissioner Tony Barrow, Commissioner Darrell Banks, Commissioner Cliff Mears, our clerk Stacy Crawl. Our county engineer has joined us today, Adam Gove. We have Rachel Troyer from Central Services. Looking at Carl Hunnell all day on a screen is just terrifying.
I had to.
Wendy Dillingham is here from Sebco. We have Andrew Keller, who's battling the West Nile virus, apparently. And do we have Ralph and Ed on the phone? We have Norton on there. Are they there? Looks like they are. Apparently, you can't have hair if you work at the source because Jay Allred and Carl Hunnell, look like the same person. So,
hey Tony, look behind you. It's
I'm
coming.
looking good, baby. I'm looking
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Keep combing over. Keep combing over.
All right, Wendy, welcome to your favorite county, Richland. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Good to see all of you.
And I'm sure you're about to tell us how costly it is to provide a health insurance plan.
Unfortunately, I am.
Okay, so
I was scheduled to be here back in December to give you your third quarter. When we canceled those, I think we all had plans. I'm not sure why. I would have thought it was a good idea to set up coming to see you on December 21st. I think we all kind of thought, maybe we should postpone that to later. So I've given you the third quarter report. I'm not going to go over that. We're just going to go over the end of the year since it's all kind of.
Can I point out that the county roads were well taken care of that day?
I believe they were, because I believe we canceled it 2 days before that. When they were looking at what was going on, we thought, we can do this at another time. So looking at the end of the year, before I get into this, I want to talk a little bit about things for 2022. Maybe didn't go as well as we would hope. New for 2022, we instituted a program called RX Maintenance 90. This is a requirement that members fill their maintenance medications in a 90-day fill, and that they needed to do it in very specific pharmacies or through home delivery. And we will take on it. We did not do a great job on educating on this program because we didn't necessarily fully understand it when we determined to put it into play. Little background on that. Every spring, our board of directors has a retreat where the vendors come in and talk about programs, and it's a decision-making time for our board of directors. And of course, our board of directors is made up of commissioners from member counties. And Anthem Prescription came in and presented on this particular program. And when we look at your loss ratio numbers, you'll see all of the counties do all of this with prescription. This program was presented, and it's a big cost. And I think our board of directors felt save some money in the prescription area because the loss ratios in prescriptions are just phenomenal. So there is a large savings being predicted by going to this program because you're saving on dispensing fees and you're pushing people to go to certain pharmacies that have agreed to accept a better discount or to use the home delivery for those maintenance meds. And in the analysis of our program, we have 8,000 of our 26,000 members that are on maintenance meds. Now, these are meds you take every day. So what we didn't fully understand, we understood that they needed to get them for a 90-day fill, and they could do it at retail or they could do it for home delivery. We didn't realize that it was only certain pharmacies, that it wasn't all the pharmacies in the Anthem network, it's certain pharmacies. So the pharmacies that you have to go to do your maintenance fill are CVS, Kroger, Walgreens, or Walmart, or Sam's Club. Those are the network pharmacies. There are also some independent pharmacies.
So Rite Aid's not in that.
No.
Drug Mart.
Drug Mart's not, Rite Aid's not,
Walgreens not.
Giant Eagle, and none of the other grocery stores. It's those three. And then there are some independent.
Wait, can you back up and say exactly what that means to a member in our health insurance plan?
A member who is on a maintenance med.
Maintenance med, okay.
Medication that you're taking every day that you're going to take every day for the rest of your life, they must now fill their medications for a 90-day fill at one of those pharmacies or through home delivery. They will be allowed 2 complimentary 30-day fills at whatever pharmacy they're going to. They would have been notified. First letter would have gone to them in November, listing these are the medications that you're on that are considered maintenance meds, and you will now need to fill these at a 90-day fill at a network maintenance pharmacy. And in that letter would be listed some pharmacies in your area that would be part of that. Then after one fill in 2022, if they were filling it at, say they're filling it at a Rite Aid, and maybe they'd filled it previously for 90 days at a Rite Aid. When they went to fill that in January, Rite Aid would tell them, I'm only permitted to fill this for 30 days for you. And that would automatically generate a letter to them from Anthem Prescription that would indicate you have one more 30-day complimentary fill, then you must go to 90 days. You can do it at these pharmacies or you can do it through home delivery. And there'd be a number that they could call, transfer to home delivery. After the second 30-day fill, they'll get another letter saying you can no longer fill this at the pharmacy that you're filling for 30 days. You must do a 90-day. So you probably got a lot of calls in January, some in February, but I will tell you, you're probably going to get a lot of calls now because people who were filling their medication for 90 days and filled it for 90 days back in December are just now having their prescription being go into another 90 day. And if they've been filling it, as you said, at a Rite Aid or a Discount Drug Mart or Giant Eagle or one of those, they're being told when they go in, they can't fill it for 90 days. They can do a 30-day fill. So you're going to get another round of phone calls. Now, we've certainly sent out communication pieces. They got a letter to their home and they will continue to get a letter. But if they don't move it, when they go to try to fill it, after they've done their 2 complimentary fills, if they go to Rite Aid to fill it, Rite Aid is going to tell them, I can't fill it through your insurance. I can fill it and you can pay the cost, but I cannot fill it through your insurance. So
Can't wait.
Rachel's got the phone calls already.
yeah, she's gotten a lot of them.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's handled
She's
them.
gotten a lot. I would tell you, you're not the county that's gotten the most amount of calls.
What county's that? So we can,
But part of it, what I will say is when Anthem Prescription presented this to the board, they'd already done their research on where prescriptions were being filled retail wise. And so at that point, they said of your overall membership who are filling maintenance meds at retail, 80% of them are already filling them at a CVS. So CVS is by far the pharmacy that the majority of our members use if they're going to retail. So that said, you actually have CVS, Walmart, and Kroger here in so that your members do have alternatives. We do have a few counties that they don't have a lot of alternatives. And interestingly, I was in a county yesterday that has no pharmacies in the network in their county.
In the county?
They do not have a CVS, they do not have a Walmart, and they do not have a Kroger. They do have a Rite Aid and a Discount Drug Mart. They weren't worried at all. They looked at their loss ratio and they said, got to do what we got to do.
looks like mail in for them.
Yeah, mail's a fork option. That's what they do.
So that said, that was the big program for 2022 that has gotten a lot of noise. We're hoping that things will go smoother. We're also hoping that the guaranteed savings that we've been told is there, that, there is some savings and it's not insignificant. It's a significant amount of money, which is why our board determined to do it. So this is also our RFP year. So just letting you know that the responses are back, and in June, we'll be meeting with the people that responded to the RFP.
Sorry, RSP.
RFP, request for proposal. Every 3 years, we do this to be in compliance with Ohio Revised Code 9.833 on your behalf and on all of our county's behalf to shop for the best carrier. On the medical side, we will be our responders are Anthem, who's our current, Aetna, and UHC. And so we'll be meeting with them and going over, our consultant, Aon, will be determining from a discount percentage, from the coverage, from the whole deal. MMO declined to quote this year. On the prescription side, we have CVS, Express Scripts, Anthem Prescription, Optum. So there are a number of carriers that are quoting on the prescription side. We'll make our decision in June and of course notify. Any questions on that? Well, let's look at your reports. Ending the plan year, your loss ratio on medical is 95.1. Your prescription loss ratio is 127.1. And that's quite consistent with many of our counties. We can see that's one of the reasons why anything we can do to try to get some savings in prescription. Combining them, your total loss ratio is 102.4. Kind of what that means is for every dollar we're taking in premium from you, we're paying out $1.02. Your dental is 80.4. And then let's looking at your enrollment. And this is the average enrollment over the 12-month period of time. Under the tier of employee only, you have 203 employees. Under the tier of employee plus spouse, you have 79 employees rolled for a total of 158 members. In the employee plus child or children tier, you have 138 employees for 403 members. In the family tier, you have 98 employees for 384 members. So total number of employees average for the year is 518. And total number of members for the year is 1,148. And if we look at the demographics, kind of breaking down, average age of your female employee is 47 years, 9 months. Average age of your male employee is 45 years, 9 months. Females make up 52% of your enrollment and males make up 48% of your enrollment. If we flip to the next page, kind of looking at a breakdown of your the per member per month cost under medical is $438.64. Per employee per month under medical is $972.33. The per member per month under prescription is $174.87. Per employee is $387.64. You put those together and your per member per month medical and prescription is $613.51. And per member per month medical is one per employee per month is $1,359.97. Your total medical spend for the year was a little bit over $6 million. Your total prescription spend for the year was a little bit over $2.4 million. Your discount dollars is $6 million. 97.4% of your claims were in network. Next page, looking at high cost claimants. And this particular report, high cost claimant being 50. And I always feel the need to say, you don't have to have a huge medical situation going on to have a $50,000. You could have an overnight stay in the hospital. So looking at this, the total amount paid in 2021 in medical claims was $8.4 million for Richland County. In medical for high cost claimants, it's $2.2 million. And the high cost claimants make up 43.3% of your dollar spend for the year. It's 3.1% of your enrollment. And you had 36 members that were considered to be high cost claimants. If we go to the next page, looking down at your enrollment and claims, a little pie chart, the first one on the left shows you by membership. The one on the right shows you by relationship what the paid claims were. So 45.1% of your enrollment is employee, and they make up 49.7% of your claims. 15.5% of your enrollment is spouse. They make up 33.3% of your claims. 39.4% of your enrollment are children, and they make up 19% of your claims. And then just drilling down, looking into summary by age band as far as the percentage of your enrollment. The lighter blue is female, the darker blue is male. You can see that the largest enrollment as far as percentage is the 15 to 24 age category for males. The next is female in that category, 15 to 24. And your next largest is female in the 55 to 64% category. So it's kind of an interesting demographic to look at to see where your enrollment actually is. Page breaking down that per member per month spend, where it's being spent. And that first column goes into what it is. The second column is for plan year 2021. The second column, or the third column, is 2020. And the fourth column is 2019. So it's comparing 3 years of data. Inpatient facility is 95.19 of your per member per month spend. Outpatient is 206.64 of your spend. And professional services are 136.81 of your spend. And then down below is a little graph which shows the current year is the lighter blue, 2020 is the darker blue, and 2019 is the green. So you can see, looking at a graph format, what the spend looks like. And then claims distribution, this little graph down below. 57% of your enrollment had claims totaling less than $1,000 in 2021. 16% of your enrollment had claims totaling less than $2,000 in 2021. And 6% of your enrollment had claims totaling less than $3,000 in 2021. You can see the bulk of your membership did not have a significant number of claims. Go to the next page. I'm going to look at prescriptions. These are the top 10 prescriptions for plan year 2021. Your top 10 prescriptions make up 55.9% of your pharmacy spend. They represent 143 of the 12,780 prescriptions filled. So the number one prescription is Humira CF. A single prescription for this is $7,235, and that is for 30 days. This is used to reduce pain and swelling due to certain types of arthritis. Number two medication is Promacta. Single prescription is $12,585. This is also a 30-day spend. It's used to treat low platelet levels in people who have certain blood disorders. And the number three prescription is, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. A single prescription is $15,039. Number four is Stelara. A single prescription is $26,469. So these are all injectable medications. They're all pricey. They're all ordered through the specialty pharmacy. What we need to remember when we're looking at these medications is they are probably keeping people out of the hospital, so they're getting a medication. Also be to continue working, and they might normally be on disability if these medications have not come about. But medications, the cost of them are becoming almost unsustainable. I mean, clearly $26,000 a month is a pretty hefty amount for a county or for an employer to be bearing.
And so I've got a question. When you say per prescription or per script, how many days is that?
30 days.
These are all 30-day. Okay.
These are all on your top 10 are all specialty, and they can only be purchased in a 30-day fill. Then looking a little bit more at prescription, 12,256 of your medications are purchased at retail. And of those 12,000 at retail, 10,448 are generic medications. You only had 524 prescriptions purchased through in 2021. I think we may see that increase with the Maintenance 90 program, but we may not. I mean, because a lot of us are just more comfortable picking our medication up at a retail pharmacy in the mail. And then the little graph below shows kind of showing you that the retail single source brand makes up 82.3% of your spend. Single source brand is 1,674 medications. So it kind of shows that small amount of meds make up most of it. If we flip to the next page, we're looking at your discounts. Inpatient, your discount is 42.8%. Outpatient, the discounts are 31.3%. Professional, it's 2 for a total of 46.1%. And this does kind of speak to the value of the Anthem networks. Their discounts are pretty significant. Then the next page that looks like this kind of goes over what paid in claims broken down by month, what was billed in premium. And on this, we'll show you Richland and then Subco overall. So it shows you your paid claims of medical, your paid claims by prescription, putting it together, and your dental paid claims. And then, of course, you don't have vision with this, so those are 0, but it's kind of showing you where you fall within the paid claims within the Subco overall. And the next page, if you flip it over, shows you your average enrollment, and it also. And then down below, I've dropped in your high cost claimants. Your loss ratio that I've presented include the high cost claimants, but at the time of renewal, those are pulled out. You had 619,000 in year 2021 of dollars that are being pulled out. Any questions on anything? I'm nervous. Tony's calculating there.
I mean, this is hard for the, I'm looking at the 2021 general fund premiums. Not that we don't care about other funds, but that's our operating fund was $4.1 million. And I was actually just reviewing our revenues and expenses again. That's, I mean,
Well,
I always love discounts in the health insurance field too. I equate it to when I worked at Kohl's in college. You know, Kohl's would charge something and say, "Oh, but it's on sale for $20 off." I'm like, well, you could say it's on sale for anything. So I always love discounts in the health insurance world.
well, the
How that
discount,
works.
that's where the insurance carrier is
Sure.
negotiated off of the bill charge. I mean, if you are unfortunate enough not to have insurance, they'll sometimes negotiate with you, but they're not going to negotiate down to what an Anthem, an Aetna, or UHC has been able to negotiate. If you're with a smaller carrier, you're not getting those kind of discounts. I mean, they're getting huge, and it's the volume of members that they have that they can negotiate that way. If you talk to, I'll just be honest, I used to work in provider relations at Anthem. If you talk to physicians, a lot of times they may not be positive when they speak about Anthem because of the negotiated discount that they have to accept. But it is what it is. I don't know what else to do. The thing that we've not been able to get a great handle on, no matter who your carrier is or whatever, is the rising cost of prescription. That within the next 12 months, I believe there's supposed to be a medication coming out that's going to be very pricey to treat Alzheimer's. Number of other more pricey medications. When I say pricey, I mean $190,000. Any questions on anything?
I don't have a question, but I have to make a comment that I don't watch a lot of television. I see commercials for
Every single
Mira,
one of those.
Yes.
and they say, ask your doctor about. There's all these dollars being spent to advertise something that you can't go out and buy. How many people really say, hey, doctor, I want this drug?
Many.
A lot.
apparently quite a few because they're spending advertising dollars. I just think it's odd that there's all these dollars being spent that don't go actually, they go to the consumer, but something you can't buy. You have to ask somebody else, can I buy this thing?
30-second commercial, the first 15 seconds are how good it is. The next 15
All the side effects.
side effects.
Well, the law is that on any medication that is being overseen by the Food and Drug Administration, you do have to have a prescription. There are people who do not have insurance and they are actually paying for it. And a lot of these have discount cards for the member. So one of the programs that we put into play in the last part of 2021 is a cost relief program, and it's a cost relief for you and us also, that the manufacturer is sharing a discount amount. So remember that maybe previously would have had $100 copay for the medication, has a zero copay. But along with that, there's also a discount for us that we're not paying what we would. And likewise, Richland County isn't. And that's for some of these pricier medications. But usually it's a limited run on it. I mean, it's kind of like it's a discount card for 12 months and then you revert to the other cost. But any of those things that are available, we're certainly making sure that we are making it available to our members and making it available to us to share in it, so that the counties are sharing in it also.
Hey, we got 3 minutes before our next. Any questions from Simon and Garfunkel out there?
Carl left. I don't.
I don't have any.
I guess I wasn't interesting enough for Carl to stay.
Yeah.
You covered everything.
You're just so thorough, Wendy, that, you know.
I look forward to these because they're so interesting. And it shows what a benefit is to work for Richland.
And real quick, before you go, please tell the record how much more you like Cliff than Marilyn, if you could. Stacy, always defending Marilyn, always defending Marilyn. Okay, we will take a quick recess for 10. We're gonna have a visitor for about 3 to 5 minutes here at 10 o'clock. And then we'll go into our logistical items and then return at 10:30. So we'll take a quick recess for 2 minutes. Okay, it is 10:01 a.m. and we're back in session. We're being visited by a Ms. Bilberry, who's going to present to us a little bit today. I spoke with her yesterday. She's going to have about 3 to 5 minutes to address the board. She has to come in today, and being a public body, we always welcome members of the public, even if I presume, where exactly do you live? Medina, ooh, home of Larry Oboff. And Jim Renacci, ooh. And
Nice sound.
So come on in. Pleasure.
Thank you for letting me come in. I really just want to meet you three in person, give you some material. I work with ABM, so I'm dedicated to cities and counties throughout the state of Ohio. We work with legislation available to us. So we're an accredited energy savings company, service company that can guarantee you savings on your county building upgrades for up to 20 years in order to help offset the needed costs for infrastructure and facility improvements. ABM comes in and looks at everything from lighting, heating, cooling, security, windows, roofing, and we really take a holistic approach at addressing needs. When I say that, sometimes you have certain needs budgeted, infrastructure improvements budgeted. A benefit with our program is that everything from design, engineering, implementation through commissioning goes through ABM as a single point of accountability, and we're able to help fund these improvements. So I left some case studies for you to look at. We work with Warren County. They did a $2.7 million self-funded project.
ABM stands for.
ABM Industries. Everyone asks me that, and I think it's just ABM. So we have several divisions within our company, and I'm on the building solution team. You'll see some of the upgrades that we did with Warren County, and essentially just helping find that funding to help offset those costs. And again, we're bound through legislation to do so. I'll leave this material with you. Essentially, if any interest for ABM to come in at no cost to the county to conduct a walkthrough to see what opportunities there may be for savings would be something, if that's of interest to the county, we'd request to do. And we could also set up a second meeting to kind of go through the process and what it looks like.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Familiar with programs like this?
I mean, there's a lot of companies that come in. We've had some others come in. You guys do some fairly common things.
It's been a while, but we have a program similar.
Okay, very good.
I don't have any more questions. Daryl?
No draw.
Sure.
Tess, you are a BES account executive. What is BES?
Buildings Energy Solutions.
Solutions. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming from Medina today. We appreciate your time. You're always welcome. I don't know if you like coffee. I recommend you stop at our local coffee shop, Relax It's Just Coffee. Good community folks there. Get a pastry. So make yourselves at home here in Richland County.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just quickly, once the second meeting, if there is any interest.
Okay.
I can reach to you.
We got your card.
Absolutely.
We know you're close. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
wonderful day. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to some logistical items. I'm actually going to propose an amendment to the minutes. If you look on page, let's see here, page 2, where we reference New Hope's balances, they actually have nearly 21 million in carryover, not 1 million. That's a major difference.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So I would make a proposal that we amend that to appropriately reflect the significant amount of money New Hope has in their balance.
So move.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay, motion to approve requisitions.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay, next up, man, we have mean Adam Gove. He is just here to discuss rejecting a bid for the Applegate Road culvert. Anything you want to say there before we have that motion?
Sure, just to reflect on why it's being rejected is 10% over the engineer's estimate that's required by law. You can award a project in excess of 10% over the engineer's estimate. Our estimate for this portion of work, which was basically furnishing and supplying a box culvert and some precast wing walls, it was $101,065. We had one bid come in at $131,137. So we have no choice other than to reject the bid. And our revised code gives us some options as to how we approach what to do after we've rejected all bids. And we would like to re-advertise after adjusting the engineer's estimate. So our new estimate for re-advertising will be $128,000.
I have two questions. Why such a big jump from 100, 128? I think I know the answer, but I thought
Basically, that's what we're seeing the prices come in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I looked at last year, a very similar project. We're up 46% from last year's price.
Only Russia, though.
Yeah.
Only Russia.
Right, yeah.
Only Russia.
Their fault.
That's all it is.
So Adina was the only bid you got?
Correct. And we just did this a couple weeks ago. If you remember, we took a bid on Possum Run. Similar thing, we had to reject all bids and are actually going to open that Thursday. Hopefully we can get somebody to bid in that price range.
What's the time span between engineer's estimate and when the bids are received? I'm thinking the intervening time.
It's not long. I mean, we're doing an estimate usually just before we're sending up our advertisement to get approval to advertise.
Mock Road. Bridge, that wasn't Culvert.
Yeah.
I drove over it last night. That looks good.
Yeah, it's a very nice project. That one turned out well.
Actually went that way to see it.
So unfortunately, this is what we're looking at is under current climate of construction, I guess. And this, these boxes are mostly concrete and steel. I don't know that we're going to see this big of an increase in asphalt at this time, hoping, crossing our fingers. But obviously this type of increase is concerning for the rest of the work we've done for this year. So we will start, unfortunately this year we're kind of set. We have plans done. The bridges that we're going to bid this year are ready to go. So there's not much we can do to change design, but moving forward, we may have to look at doing some different things as far as design. Whether we do precast or we do cast in place or the materials we're using. So
I did see you had some conversation with Andrew on starting to do some projects to fill that 2020 COVID loss. So that's good. We can get moving on that. So, okay, motion to reject.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Well, you know what they say when you're rejected, you try again, right? So
Let's do it again.
I spent my whole life getting rejected. So, but I tried and I eventually found someone. So let's hope that Adam has better luck and can do it a little quicker than I did. So take it away on the next item up for bid, which is re-advertising for Culvert on Applegate Road.
I'll make a motion that we re-advertise.
And I'll second that.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Some of the options you talked about, if you don't go with precast, will probably involve more labor rather than something that's
correct. And that's been the savings on doing precast is there's less labor time, shorten the duration of our road closures.
with the materials going up, that cost differential may.
Correct.
Okay, next, motion to approve a utility permit application from Columbia Gas on Plymouth Spring Mill Road.
Second.
Rivera,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Motion to approve utility permit application from Spectrum on Pleasant Hill Road.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Rivera,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
I actually have a little bit of other, John. I don't know if you guys saw this, but our broadband application,
Mhm.
the state of Ohio and charter got approved.
Yes.
Andrew and I continue to communicate with CCAO and charter on the ARPA requirements.
Mhm.
Because if we recall, it's very tricky and very lengthy. There's been a lot of behind the scenes conversation. We want to make sure we're complying with the federal procurement guidelines, and there's some questions surrounding the application process in the state of Ohio. While it meets obviously state of Ohio procurement guidelines, we want to make sure that we're complying with the feds. We're not the only people in this boat. I had a conversation with Charter yesterday morning. They informed me they believe they have some ideas and that we should be okay. Again, we're not the only county in this boat, but it's good news, presuming we can work through just the procurement items there. So it looks like we'll have nearly 1,000 residents will now have the opportunity to get broadband, which would be fiber, which they haven't had before. So this is a really good thing. So
Curious.
northern part of the county. You have broadband at your house?
Yes.
I would figure the county engineer would, but making sure. So that's my other. Anyone else have any other?
I mean,
All right, unless
Okay.
you wanted to talk about the brackets.
After the recording.
Yeah, it's typical Iowa State grad. They talk before it's over. So we'll recess until 10:30. Andy?
I don't know what he's.
There's Harvey Webster and Andy.
I spoke out at solid waste dinner one time
I think it was Harvey Webster.
about 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was Harvey.
Well, he spoke just a couple years ago. And then about 2 or 3 years before that, his Eagle presentation was fantastic.
Yeah, I think that was Harvey. So unfortunately, they've lost a lot of those people because it's museums getting very political and they're trying to make it more of a moneymaker and
I understood they appointed a couple lawyers to the board.
probably
Okay.
there was a lease agreement. Okay. It is 10:30 in the morning. And our friend of the earth is here, Jason Larson, who we won't hold it against him that he went to a lesser college than some of the other commissioners. And we're also joined by Joe Leslie, who we haven't seen for a while. Mr. Leslie is now working for another conservancy, I understand. He's the director of real estate at West Creek Conservancy. So congratulations, I believe, on your new position. And there is underway a discussion for the conservancy to acquire property, I believe, with the intent to eventually turn it over to Richland County. We are here to have Mr. Larson and Mr. Leslie inform the public about it. So take it away. Okay. Joe, are you there?
I am. Thank you very much. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. I'm a little under the weather today, and I assume you would probably want me to keep it at home, which I have. So again, thanks, and thank you for the congratulations. It's a great opportunity, a great small organization, and we're working hard in all kinds of areas over northern Ohio. We're not really limited in our area, so we're also working in Wayne County and Crawford County and some other areas across. We've got lots of land holdings throughout northern Ohio, and our goal here is for the conservation preservation of this 215 acre property, approximately 215 acre property, on which are currently 2 homes, neither of which we will acquire. We'll keep both of them in private ownership and keep them on the tax base for that reason. So this is an important piece because it's farmland that has substantial hydrologic manipulation, and as a result of some of the drain tiles that run directly into the unnamed tributary to Clear Fork, that run directly into Clear Fork Reservoir, the conservation of this property and restoration of this property will result in cleaner water into Clear Fork Reservoir, which is the primary drinking source for the city of Mansfield. So we see it as a very viable opportunity. If you look at the maps that two different, one unnamed tributary as well as Clear Fork that runs north into Clear Fork. This is one of the primary agricultural fields that would be creating the water challenges in Clear Fork Reservoir. And I'd be happy to answer any questions from anybody.
Jason, you have any add-on before we? I just want to say, Joe approached us recently about this. My board is in full support of this as we move forward on trying to procure the Clean Ohio grant funding for this project. And I know when I presented it to my board after I talked to Joe, it just seemed to be a win-win all the way around for everybody. It's preserving, it's bringing back wetland habitat. It's helping the watershed. It's helping to clean up the water that goes into the Clear Fork, which is a major source of drinking water. And best of all, basically, this project, as you can see from the one map, is going to take place over a number of years through a number of phases to the restoration process. And the best part is West Creek, covers all of the funds associated with this. So they write the grant. They are going to do all the restoration activity, work with the park district hand in hand through that process, manage it through the restoration process, and then eventually turn it over for management to the park district. And being a wetland,
There are recreational opportunities there, educational opportunities, but there are no structures. There's nothing that you would see the challenges that have been put forth with a place like Fleming Falls and Camp Moana with buildings and roads and things of that nature. And essentially, once the wetland is in place and done correctly, there's very minimal work on behalf of the park district to have to maintain that. So we get a free park for the park district. It helps with wetland restoration. It helps with water quality, and it doesn't cost us anything essentially up front.
Well, Jason, I appreciate that. One of my concerns is we just took on Camp Moana. We've also taken on yet, but we have agreed to with the NIST property, and you're pretty limited in your resources. Can you handle all this?
Well, one of the things as we look forward to other funding sources, potentially, more grant funding, potentially a levy, is that one of the reasons I looked into this and talked with the board and Joe about it to a great extent was because there is very minimal impact on our resources, our staffing for a property like this. Essentially it's a wetland is restored to this area and it's there and does its job. And we're not mowing the grass. We're not fixing buildings. There's not a lot of cost involved once it's set up. It's basically just there doing its job, providing for potential recreation, potential possibly hunting or trapping opportunities on a limited basis. There's just initially, especially, there's just not a lot that's of any cost to the county.
So go ahead, Darrell.
We would look to seek grants for any kind of improvements like the parking lot or anything like that. We would do the same and seek grants for that kind of that infrastructure that we might wish to put on the property, maybe some aggregate trails that would again be paid for. And what our goal would have minimal maintenance on anything that would be done, but the restoration on the project is going to take years. And as a result, planning is going to take a few years, and then the construction of the wetland and stream restoration are going to take time after that. So it's not that it couldn't be used as a passive recreation area immediately, because it could, but it isn't something that we would invite the public onto immediately. It would be a longer term, and then it would be an open to the public property. I would assume, of course, if we wish to have that. I would say that there are some park districts that would look at parks and preserves as two separate things. A preserve is something that they wouldn't really have open to the public, and the park would be obviously something they do. In this case, I can see this being open to the public in the future. I can't see it during the time of construction, of course. So any cost burden on any kind of restoration, monitoring anything will be borne on West Creek for, gosh, I would have to say it's going to be probably 6 or 8 years before we get this thing completed.
West Creek pays for all of the reestablishments, rehabilitations. What's the costs if this happens on the county taxpayers?
There isn't any cost on the county taxpayers. What I would suggest to you is that the one thing that obviously you probably have in your mind is the tax base. But leaving the two homes on the tax base and removing them from CAUV, they will no longer be eligible for CAUV. The balance of the property is on CAUV, so removing those houses from any kind of a tax generation, to me, it's a minimal impact. And it is, again, the impact is the other way. It is an immediate impact, nearly immediate. Well, it will be very quick, the impact on Third Fork Reservoir, which is obviously a financial impact as well to the city of Mansfield for drinking water. I can see this being the opposite of costing taxpayers money. I can see it saving taxpayers money and the burden that it takes to not only deal with the challenges, phosphorus nutrients, and Third Fork, but also then the wells that have to take the place of that during the time when the reservoir is sufficient for the water source.
With the water, the Clear Fork Reservoir, what your restoration, will it cut down on the time or add to the time that it takes the water to flow from this property to the reservoir?
Well, it's always necessary to, if you think about wetlands as the kidney to clean, right? It will be necessary to slow it to some degree. But in any storm event, it's nearly impossible to slow it.
Sure.
But the way to look at it is the water that slowly will actually cut through right now, so we'll create more a meandering stream, and that in itself will allow the water to have ways of being cleaned on this property, as opposed to the 150-ish acres of agricultural fields that drain directly into that open ditch that runs into Clear Fork. There are also floodplains here that are worthy of protection. This is a floodplain area, so there's an awful lot to this property that makes sense for preservation as opposed to continued agricultural production.
The Clear Fork Dam is not, it is a reservoir. It is not a dam that has anything to do with the flooding. It water comes in, water goes out, depending on rainwater and so forth. You can't lower and raise the dam spillway. So anything that slows down water at that point certainly helps a little bit, probably very little, but a little bit downstream.
It will definitely help. It will definitely help on normal course of things, but in a 50 or 100-year event, it's going to top over and keep moving.
Obviously.
But and a big rain definitely going to slow it down. This is not an inundation area. This is actually floodplain as a part of the course of this Clear Fork, this unnamed tributary that flows through the property. It is a designated 100-year floodplain. So that in itself, if you think about the agricultural practices on what could flood, we'll just say once in 100 years, but recently that once in 100 years has turned into once in 10 years. But as anything in between 0 and 100-year flood flows beyond the banks of that channelized ditch, again, you get the sediment and the nutrients that compound and get into the work.
So walk us, and by us, the taxpayer, if Joe or Jane taxpayer was sitting in here, walk us through the process and how this would work. From where we are now to eventually the intent to donate, if one of you two would.
Well, ultimately and Joe, jump in here. Ultimately, the first step is applying for the Clean Ohio grant to bear the bulk of the expenses. Rust Creek Conservancy, again, is doing that on our behalf. So again, we don't have to spend the time as the public entity. We don't have to spend the taxpayers' money to submit the grant, put it together, support it. They will find all the other sources of money. I know one of the things when you put a grant like this together, you always have to find matching funds. For a Clean Ohio grant, it's 25% match. So again, is that coming from the county commissioners? Who's that coming from? A foundation? Again, West Creek's going to supply that fund, so we don't have to spend time looking for the match. And then they will move through the entire process of the restoration and all the steps that go with that before eventually to the park district for management.
So stupid question. Let's say Cliff, Daryl, and I are not sitting here 6 or 8 years from now.
Okay.
What if the 3 commissioners sitting up here don't want to take the land? Not saying we would or we wouldn't. I'm just curious as to what if, ultimately there has to be some sort of acceptance from the county, correct?
Correct. It would be an acceptance from the park district. If the park district would ever go away, then all park district land.
So is it ultimately it would ultimately be a commissioner's decision, right?
For the park, for the
To
county?
ultimately accept the land,
No, it would be the
the park district.
park districts.
But ultimately, if the parks were dissolved, then
If the park district ever went away, as I understand the code, all of the holdings of the park district would become the county.
So I'm going to ask a dumb question here. When you talk about the process required for restoration, what is that? What are you doing? What has to be done?
Well, I can speak to some of it. Basically, you're going to go in, and the biggest thing with a wetland that's a agricultural area is more than likely it's been ditched or tiled. So, for example, you can see on the map there, you'll notice one of the phases is the major tributary that goes through there, making it meander or snake back and forth. Where if you're a farmer, you don't want that. You get the water off of your property as quick as you can. So you would take a tributary like that and ditch it. And basically now your water is going straight, line. You would also go in, it's not as evident on those maps, but there's also in the furthest, the best wetland area that exists still on it that's degraded. There's another ditch with tile that goes down through that on the far west end. And you would go in and then dig up and break up all that drainage tile. Therefore, the water isn't flowing down into those tiles and again, shooting, as quickly as possible. So those are the two, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, those are probably the two biggest things that would need to be done right off the bat, along with then, restoration of the wetlands in terms of adding new plant species, planting seedlings and things of that nature, correct?
Well, yes, the first thing is crushing tiles, because that is the primary source. The ditch itself is a longer term restoration. Adding sinuosity to that ditch is a longer term. It's more important to keep the fresh soil from entering into that ditch, and whether that's groundwater from a flooded time or whether that's drain tiles. The groundwater from a flooded time, obviously the solution there is vegetation, whether it's meadow habitat, reforestation, or in this case, ultimately the goal of wetland restoration. That keeps it from being fresh soil flowing down into the lake. There are some category 3 wetlands on this property. We just got a report back yesterday that we have 2 areas that are category 3 wetlands. So there are a considerable amount of wetlands that are not shown on the federal jurisdictional map, but they're present on this site. There are wooded wetlands. It's actually a very nice property outside of the agricultural fields, and even the agricultural fields. What they are, the soils that they're comprised of, hydric soils, a large portion of them are hydric soils, which are wetland soils. So the creation of wetlands, it wants to revert back to a wetland like it was at one time. The ditch is what kept this from continuing to be a wetland, and obviously a farmer along the way. And many times the government actually paid for farmers to create these ditches and clear these fields so that they could plant crops. But right now there are certain areas of our counties and our areas that they very much warrant restoration back to wetland habitat. And whether it's in this case an immediate primary source that would be benefit from this. In other cases, it's just simply that it's keeping it from being migrating its way up to Lake Erie or wherever the stream ultimately goes. In this case, it's direct impact on drinking source. So what we would do immediately is the tile crushing, and that in itself will do an awful lot to then create wetlands. But what we have to do is plan for it appropriately, because you just don't want to start creating a wetland and then not have a plan for the vegetation and have invasives take over that are no good for our wetland restoration project. That's the planning mechanism of it.
Joe, this water flows to the Ohio River. But my real question is what is a category 3 wetland?
Yes, I know it's the Ohio River. When we talk about some of the other very easy to monitor challenges with nutrients and sediment, we can look at the city of Toledo and point a finger there. It's still the same thing at the Ohio River. It's just less impactful. In this particular case, we are talking about an impact that goes straight into Clear Fork. So a category 3 wetland, are three categories of wetland, 1, 2, and 3. And the highest quality, least impacted wetland is the 3. So there are highest quality wetlands on this site. Category 1.
Do
Cut off.
we lose him?
Yep.
Hold on.
Welcome back.
Hi there. I'm not sure where I left off.
Category 1.
Yeah. Did you say category 3 is the highest quality?
Yes.
Yes.
Category 3 is the highest quality. Category 1 is a wetland that has had impacts or degradation. So yes, category 3 is the highest quality wetland.
Thank you. This land currently being farmed?
Is he farming it still, Joe, or is it in, I know,
He is farming it, and we will plan to have him continue to farm it so that it doesn't get overtaken by invasives for a certain period of time. We'll have a period of time, then we'll have him cease the farming operation.
This acquisition would not take place, you're saying, for 6 to 8 years, right?
well, the whole process,
But when would the park board actually take possession?
not until it's all finished.
6 to 8 years.
Yep. That's why I said they're minimal risk, minimal funding, minimal resources for us for the next 6 to 8 years until the project is finished. So we literally doing all the work, and then they turn it over to us.
And the vision for completion is there will be roads and signage and a parking lot and
Ultimately, we want to leave it in there so that we could have parking lot, maybe a pavilion there for education. I mean, eventually writing it into the deed restriction to potentially possibly put in trails or observation deck or something like that. That could be accessed. But again, all of that can be done after the fact. It doesn't need to be done, and we're still getting the wetland. We're still getting those recreational opportunities. So
We
I
obviously,
think we'll be able to accomplish some of those things. So whatever you would wish to have there, Jason, during the period of time where we're restoring, and certainly we'll plan for those things during that time as well.
obviously there's no formal action on our part. I think you've heard some of our concerns as we're always wary whether the three of us will be sitting here or not. The park district eventually takes us over. You have the power in the ORC to do it, but obviously the park district needs funding from the general fund. And I think the concern is whether it's 6 years or 8 years from now, I think we are mindful of taking on legacy costs for whoever sits in these chairs forever long.
and that's why I think with this project, with this property, even given our limited amount of resources at the time being, there's just very minimal. I mean, we can put more money into this if we want, but when this thing is restored and it's a functioning wetland and it's sitting there on that property, there's very, very little. We can make it a lot, or we can, not have to manage it any more than we need to. And if we're doing the basic amount of what needs to be done out there, there's very, very minimal costs or, staff work that needs to be done on a property like this. It basically, for the greater part, it takes care of itself. If you want to do more things out there and put in trails and dikes and observation decks and things of that nature, you can't. You don't have to. So right now, if the project gets turned over to us in 8 years, and nobody's sitting here, it's all new commissioners. I don't foresee the cost being any more than it is right now, to be honest, which is next to nothing.
Jason, you are asking commissioners for something, aren't you?
Yes. Well, we're asking, and it's not required. You don't have to. It's not needed for the application, but basically, like I did back in July or August, I believe, of last year for the property along the bike trail, basically asking just for a letter of support saying, we think this is a good idea, or, we support, what's happening right now. We're also actively seeking letters of support from the city of Mansfield because of the impact that it has to the drinking water supply. and working with some of the other organizations in the area to get letter support, especially from places like Soil and Water. So it's entirely, we'd love to have your support. Again, it's not a binding contract. It's just something that says, hey, we endorse this. We think it's a good idea. We don't have to have it, but we would, like to have the support of the commissioners.
I think from a cost benefit standpoint, I don't see much cost and I see greater benefit. So I would support a letter of support.
Sounds like Cliff, as the park liaison, is going to draft the letter or work with Jason on the letter draft. Huh?
And I would
Do that.
I also would support this very minor prevention of flooding, not prevention, just managing it, but it's a start to slow down water and the phosphorus and other things that comes from farming. And it's just a small start, pulling back a little bit of water.
And when you see the impact with places like Lake Erie and up around Toledo, and again, sometimes farmers will get angry when you talk about, the impacts that happen because of agriculture, and it's everybody's fault. It's the farmers are farming because we need things from the farmers. So
We wash our clothes using
exactly. But when you consider over 96 to 98% of the wetlands, I believe those are the correct numbers, Joe, of wetlands in the state of Ohio have been destroyed in the last 200 years. That's why all of our water shoots into the reservoirs and we have flooding issues, because the trees and the wetlands aren't there to act as kidneys and sponges. And so again, putting this back and showing a really good example of how it happens, in the long term, who knows? We might be able to work with them to do some impact studies right downstream to say, after a big storm, when this is being farmed, what kind of nutrients are going into the stream? And then after the fact that the wetlands there, so you could use it as a learning tool as well.
not only the chemicals and stuff that get into the water, but just the water itself.
Water itself.
Does. And I would hope that the park would use this more of a preserve than a park.
Mm-hmm. And for the most part, it is. I mean, again, it's a wetland. So even I've been to a lot of the Ashland parks that are in wetlands, and when it floods, it doesn't matter if you put trails in, they're underwater.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much wetlands and water and you preserve and hold back, there's still going to be flooding, especially in an area that is a wetland and is designed to hold water. So those could be, again, I think just in the eye that we could open it up for additional opportunities, but mostly it would nature and wildlife and to serve the purposes of holding water and acting as a functional wetland. So, but we want to look at possibilities to get the public in there to some degree to show them, what it is and what it does. So
Education.
absolutely.
I applaud your work and Joe with the West Creek Conservancy for putting together what appears to me a well thought out, process and plan to improve the area, turning over to the park board.
Any questions, fellas?
Anything else, Joe?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions.
Oh, sorry.
That's Al.
Al.
What's the total cost you're looking at for doing this kind of work? How big is
Joe.
the grant?
We don't have it.
Go ahead, Joe.
We don't have a total cost because it's going to probably be a build design approach to it, but I can give you some estimates of a project like this. So a wetland restoration on something this size could be in the $1.5 million range. That magnitude. So it's going to be done over phases.
Now you understand that the county's not paying for that.
Yeah, I understand, but
Okay.
he's talking about a Clean Ohio grant, so
Right.
there's got to be some figure associated with that.
Absolutely.
Well, we're into that. The Clean Ohio grant will be for the acquisition of the property. So we don't have the appraisal back yet to determine what that dollar amount will be. Once we do, we'll have that number, what we'll be asking. of Clean Ohio.
Okay. And outside of, digging up the tile and basically allowing the water to go into a more natural water course, what other kind of work would the restoration involve, and why is it going to take, so many phases?
So because first of all, we want it to be done properly and we have to pay for it. So it's going to take money over a series of years from different funding sources to get it taken care of. That's the first thing. The second thing is it has to be a phased approach. You can't just go in and bust all of the tiles. If you were to block the tiles, that would help immediately. It would be an immediate impact to the water going into the lake and thereby an immediate impact to any potential rush of water or flooding. But what happens behind that is then ground that could become an invasive species problem. So, and I'm sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so I'm not speaking exactly clearly, but you want to make sure that it's done very precisely because everything has a consequence. And in this particular case, even as simple as cutting the tile will have a consequence. So our goal will have to be to block the tiles, but also to plant meadow habitat that in the future, we don't have to spend a lot of money to get rid of to plant, to reforest in certain areas. And that's the problem and the reason for the phased approach. Not to mention the portion of the property that is floodplain. There are only certain things that it's logical to put in those areas of the project, of the property.
Okay. Jason, you mentioned something about future activities, but I didn't get a sense that there are going to be too terribly many. You said hunting in maybe people, observing. Is that pretty much what you're talking about in terms of future activities?
Yeah, I mean, we would develop that over time based on, the final plan, and we would work with West Creek to look at the potential for recreation and educational opportunities there. Again, many of them would be passive, but we'd like to look into the possibility of, since this is a wetland, it will attract certain kinds of wildlife. Would there be the potential there, given the fact that it's in a very rural setting, which what we can't do with other parks. And again, the park board would have to agree to this, and we'd have to put that into the deed restrictions for the property. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't potentially have limited seasonal hunting there for waterfowl or trapping for muskrat or things like that. And I want to be open to the possibilities of things like that. But for the majority of the year, it would be there as a preserve type area with passive recreation, potentially for wildlife viewing, for hiking, things of that nature. Education. Go ahead.
In other words, something more on the order of the Fowler Woods type thing.
Not heavily to that extent. Like I said, I think there could be a little more activity than there is in a typical state nature preserve. There can be more educational activities there, more access. It's just that, again, it's going to be a functional wetland. So there's just a limited amount of, access you can have to an area like that in terms of walking through it or, biking or hiking, things of that nature. So, because again, its primary purpose is to be a wetland. It's a sponge for water. So it's not going to be like going to Gorman Nature Center, where you can walk pretty much over, most of the property. Most of the year, this property is going to be wet and up to your knees or worse. And so you just can't wander right into that. So there will be restrictions on more or less where you could go unless there were certain types of activities happening.
That's why I
Actually,
kind of compared it to Fowler Woods, because Fowler Woods is, pretty much wet.
Right.
12 months out of the year.
I see your comparison there. So Joe, you were saying?
I would envision this more as a preserve area with an educational attribute where there are some trails and some placards that point out what the wetland restoration is about and how it worked and the benefits, things like that. But this isn't going to be, to me, it doesn't fit for a park with lots of pavilions and picnic areas because it is wet.
And that's, I mean, the reason why I'm comparing it to Fowler Woods is because you're using a lot of terms that I heard when, back when they were putting the landfill next to it, the sponge for the area, it absorbs pollution, it's wet all the time, you don't want to drain it, and permanent wetlands and things like that. And I haven't been to Fowler's Woods in ages, but the last time I was there, it was basically a preserve with a boardwalk that you could walk through it and observe nature. And that's kind of what I hear you saying this is going to be at most.
Yes, I would say for the vast majority of the property, again, there would be opportunities there, again, for education and some passive recreation. But yes, it would be similar to something like that.
And
Okay,
Clean
those are
Ohio
all the questions I had.
recreation.
What's that, Joe?
Clean Ohio will restrict it to passive recreational use.
Yes.
Is Carl there? Carl?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question, and I apologize. My internet's been cutting in and out here. How much the Clean Ohio grant, how much you're going to apply for?
We're uncertain until we have the appraisal back.
Okay. And I know I heard discussion about a request that commissioners give a letter of support. Is that something that's you guys are going to vote on today or in the future, or?
Motion for letter support for this project.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks.
Yes.
Okay.
It answered your question quickly, didn't it, Carl?
Yeah, that's I hadn't heard, for all I knew, the way my internet's been working today, they'd already done that and I completely missed it. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
By the way, Carl, I really enjoyed your article too. I liked it and it was very informative.
Oh,
Thank
don't
you.
kiss up to you.
Well,
That gets
tell-
you nowhere in this office.
hey, that gets you a long way with me. Thank you.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Just actually, I have one quick item that came off the presses. Not good news, actually. As you know, I just spoke last week about sales tax and revenues. And so the Department of Taxation just released the sales tax collections from January, which are then February accounting period, which then hit in April. Okay, so this would be next month for us. Just 1 month different from December of 2021 to January of 2022. The increase went from 16% in the state of Ohio to 5%, and Richland actually took in less collections. Comparatively speaking, looking at collections. So obviously there was a COVID surge in January, but if I pull that up here, again, we were tracking 16% better, 15 to 16%. If you recall, when I spoke, looking at what they just sent, I'm opening it back up. The 2021 collections for Richland County over the same time frame was 1.546 million. And now it's 1.545 million. So we actually took in less money comparatively speaking.
That's what period?
That's the January 21 to January 22. I believe to think it's more related to inflation, but 1 month is not a trend yet. So something to keep an eye on from an economic metric standpoint. And the state average, which was 16% better last month, comparatively speaking, is now down to 5% better, which is less than the actual inflation. All economic indicators. So something just to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
Okay. Seeing no further business, we will recess at 11:10.
Adjourn.
Adjourn.